Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of In Conversation with ASI. Today I'm joined by Jevelle Behrendorff, one of our graduates. She's also an ASI trainer and mentor. Welcome, Jevelle.
Thanks, Claire.
I must say this outfit that you've chosen for today is spectacular. I just love the shoulder detail. If there's one person who I knew would absolutely nail turning up to a virtual recording, it would be you. I love it.
Oh yeah, it's my Zoom worthy outfit with these shoulders, all appeal up top and then not so good down the bottom. But yeah, this is my favorite Zoom outfit.
I love it. Where's it from?
It's by a designer. He's in the United States called Christopher John Rogers, and he does the most beautiful, over the top silhouettes, obviously, really impactful color. I just love his work. I've been following him for a while and he's been up for a lot of awards as well. And he just does some really great stuff. And he's designed that, was it with the inauguration over in the United States where it changed to Biden, and I've just had the biggest mind blank. Camille, she wore the purple suit, yes. And everyone talked about even just how the lapel was the opposite way to represent the party. Well, he designed that. He just does really cool stuff.
I love that. So good. Tell us a little bit about you, because some of our students, particularly our Perth students, would have had the pleasure of meeting you at some point, be that as an info night or one of our trainings that we hold there. But for some of our students who don't yet know who you are and what you do as a stylist, maybe tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, and I guess I haven't had a chance to travel to Melbourne, obviously, for a little while. So I haven't had a chance to connect with a few of our Melbourne students, which I really miss. But I am based in Perth and I started with Australian Stylist in 2016. So that feels really that's starting to make me feel really old to say that as well. It feels like it wasn't that long ago, but then I think about it, I'm like, no, it's actually quite a while ago now. And I met both Penny and Lauren when they traveled to Perth, and I was looking for something different in my life. I was at that tipping point where I needed a change, and what I was doing just wasn't fulfilling that fire within me, and I really needed more. And so a friend suggested I have a look into fashion, just because it was just something I just did naturally. I was always that person that friends would ask for outfits, or it used to be a joke at university. So I studied sports science. So you spend a lot of time in your exercise gear, as you naturally do. And I would always get changed straight away afterwards. And there used to be a running joke that I belonged in the business school because of how I was always dressed up. And that same friend I went to uni with suggested I went to look into something in fashion, and I came across Australian Style Institute, and that's basically been it. And I just love fashion. I think it's not something frivolous. And I think that subconsciously was always there in the back of my mind, that it wasn't something frivolous. It was something to play with and have fun with. And it just really changed my life coming into Australian Style Institute. And I remember a few people having a conversation with me when I was in a classroom in Melbourne. I think I was the only Perth person at that point in the classroom, in that intake. And there was that question, what has Perth got to give in the fashion industry? And I was like, we've got so much to give. We've got so many great local designers. We've got really great photographers over here. And while a lot of people probably think of Perth as being the place for beaches and coastal holidays, we do have a really great fashion scene here. And I've loved bringing that to the forefront as part of my business as well. I'm a really big believer in supporting locals. So that's something I'm really passionate about. And I've run some of my business around that passion for local, in that I now are in my 6th year of a Runway event that supports local designers. But I also love the editorial side, which is where Australian Style students would know me. I run the advanced training. And then I also do personal styling as well. So there's so much going on, but that's how I love it. So that's what I've designed my life around.
Yeah. And you're also juggling baby Levi and toddler Harrison. How do you like a mum, juggle 3 facets of your business? And then, you know, Jason, your husband, is an Australian cricketer and, you know, is sort of works away and then comes back. And I know that for a lot of the time you sort of juggle single motherhood.
Yeah.
How do you make all this happen?
It's a question I get asked a lot, and I think especially this year I've basically been, I think Jason's been home maybe equivalent of 4 weeks over 8 months, and that's not 4 weeks together, it's been over separate times, and he's pretty much been away since Levi's been born, who's obviously now 8 months. So it's not easy, I must admit, and it means compromise, I think, is probably the biggest word. Like, you can't actually do it all. It's really impossible to do it all. So I actually posted a reel on this recently, like, because I got it asked a lot how I do it all, and I just can't. Like, my house is a mess. Like, I'm willing to say that, and I'm always that person apologizing when I've had people come in, not clients, because I don't do that from home anymore, thank goodness, or when I've got sitters that come in to look after the boys. It's a mess, and it's just the way it is, because my time is either spent working or with my boys, and that's my 2 priorities. I also am a big believer in outsourcing. So when it comes, as much as I love cooking, I just don't have the time either. And it was my decision that I didn't grab the junk, that I get meals delivered, healthy meals delivered. I get Levi's purees delivered, because making them to the right texture so that they're not chalky and they're done correctly and they're healthy is really complicated. So I'm a big believer in outsourcing as well. And sometimes I've just got to let things go. I have gotten clean rage a lot this year, because the house, it just gets beyond what I would ever like it to get. But the priority is playtime with my boys and keeping them happy, as well as working on my business. So some things I've just got to let go and be okay with, and knowing that that's my decision and there's a bigger priority here.
Yeah. I love that. And I think, you know, regardless of whether you're juggling a family or another job, or, you know, there's other things that sort of come up in the way of life, whether you're caring for kids or, you know, an ill family member, which I know some of our stylists in the community deal with. Compromising to make sure that you still focus on what's important to you is so important, and you do that so beautifully. Part of your role at ASI is not only to take the advanced training, but also mentor our students. What do you sort of love about engaging with our students in those sorts of sessions?
I love it in that I just love being a part of the community, and we have an amazing community, a lot who I haven't had a chance to meet face to face. And even when it's not COVID times, often I don't get to meet them face to face, just being in a completely different location. And so being able to see these students that I follow on Instagram, that I see popping up on our Facebook page, that I see their faces when there's always the intake, you know, behind the scenes and videos, being able to connect with them over the phone is really beautiful. I love that connection point of mentoring. But I also love the fact that I'm just this tiny little cog in their wheel to success, and being able to help them get there. I've been in a situation in previous work where I did my studies and then that was it. You know, there was no one to turn to if you had a question. There was no one to help you along the way. It's even just simple things where it felt really competitive. And it was always like secret business when it came to how to get work, what to charge for work. If you were in the job that I was in, it was so competitive that you just held on to your position no matter what, and you wouldn't even let people come in and intern with you or be an apprentice. So to get your foot in that door was so hard, and I hustled for really long in that to get there. And don't get me wrong, I've hustled hard in styling. Like, I am more than open in saying that, you know, you need to, depending on where you see your success being, but also to be able to help someone be that person they can turn to ask those questions that in my previous job I couldn't ask anyone, is amazing. To allow them to find that answer that they could be sitting on for so long, or, you know, things that a lot of people hold dear and can be secret about, and knowing that you don't have to be secret to have success. You don't have to withhold information to be successful in your own right. You can still share and connect and help someone and still have your own success. And in an industry that people see really being quite fickle and competitive, I see the complete opposite. And I think I see that as well because I'm a mental help in that, and breaking down the barriers as well in that role, which I think is so important. And we talk a lot about ASI being that community, and part of that community, I'm a believer, having been a student and now as part of the team, is being that mentor. And it just makes me, I don't know, it gives me all those warm and fuzzies, I guess, as well, when I chat with a student and they're like, what, that advice you gave me really helped me get from A to B. Or, I've been wondering that for so long and now I can move on and I know what I'm doing. Or especially in the last, really frustrates me to say, it was 18 months. It's now like 20 months of everything that's been going on in the world. And we've had students that have these really big dreams and they're really scared about what the next step is, which is so normal when things are so unknown. But being able to be that, rock for them and be that person that has their back is so important to me. And knowing that they've got those people to turn to, I just love being one of those people for them.
Yeah, it's so true what you've just said, is just like that person to get the answer that you've been sitting on. And I know that, I experienced that too when I've mentored. Bernadette mentioned it in her conversation as well. It's just that opportunity to sort of get those burning questions answered and feel like you've got that ongoing support, which is really cool. I know you mentioned before the Runway show that you're a part of, and you've got the 2021 event coming up shortly. For some of our students, Runway seems like a big undertaking, which I'm sure it is. But sort of how does Privé come together?
It's funny. So I'm a co-organizer, co-producer with another Perth creative. Her name is Jante. She's also a designer that gets showcased in the Runway. And then my other role is head stylist. So I take on naturally a few hats, as I seem to do just in life in general, when it comes to that. And we say every year that the planning's always going to start earlier. We're going to give ourselves more time. We're going to give designers involved more time. And for whatever happens, there's always a spanner in the works. And last year we actually started planning early, and then, like a lot of people, those plans got put to the side because of COVID. And then we were very fortunate here in Perth that we could pick up and go again, in that we weren't in lockdown over the time that we would normally run COVID. And then this year, just with, obviously, it was a lot of stop-start, there's still that unknown. So while we say we're going to give ourselves a lot of time to do a runway, which often you generally have, we're doing this runway from start to finish in, I think it's worked out to be 6 weeks in total from start to finish, or 5 weeks, just because the date was originally October and it's now been moved forward to September. So generally with Runway, I'd say you've got a lot of leading time because there's so many moving parts you've got to consider. And I think a lot of your high-end designers, when it comes to fashion weeks, which unfortunately we don't have in Perth anymore, there is a lot of planning when it comes to it, and they are months to lead in. With ours, it's a little bit different in that we are a smaller runway. We are just a singular runway. It's not a big festival as such. So we've been lucky that we can scramble and hustle and get it all together in 5 weeks' time. But it means a lot of organisation, most definitely. It definitely means flexibility as well. As I mentioned, we thought it was going to be October. It's now September. And it's definitely people management, especially from my role as producer and stylist. I'm working with a lot of different creatives who have their own vision, but need to realise that there's an overall vision when it comes to this runway. So our overall vision is that it's spring fashion, that it's supporting local creatives and local designers. So not only just clothing, but we also have accessory designers and milliners involved as well. So they also have their own vision. So it's a really big collaborative effort. It's not a runway that you see where it's just one set designer with their own vision, their own set, how they want it styled is the way it gets styled. We need to have an element of compromise with ours, especially when it comes to hair and makeup. We don't have time to change that. So it's a cohesive look to go across all designers. But also we want to be as supportive as we can to our industry, especially because we don't have that fashion festival anymore. So that also means how many creatives can we get involved and represent? And sometimes that means as well, as we know with creatives, we all have the way that we want to do things and our own branding and vision. And sometimes it's a little bit of compromise with that so that we can all be supported in the same way, that we can all be showcased on that runway as such. So there's a lot of people management when it comes to that, as well as you're selecting music and you're doing selecting models, you're putting run orders together, you're working with hair and makeup teams to bring about what you're imagining as well as their vision, so it's their work showcased best. Back of house volunteers, you can't do it without them, and so it's also helping so that they get what they need out of it, as a lot of them are doing it for experience, to do these kind of events themselves or just experience what it's like. But as well as we have a client, we've got to reach their concept of what they vision as well. So yeah, there's collaboration and flexibility is probably an organization are probably like the main aspects that you need if you're going to do runway.
Yeah. I've like volunteered at a couple of runways in my early days of, moving into the fashion industry, and the hustle and bustle of back of house is actually so exciting. And then when you finally see it, the models walk out and the rounds of applause and things like that, it's so exciting. And I think, for anyone who's looking to venture into this space who are based in Perth, if you haven't already, I know, Jevelle, you've reached out in the Facebook group, as you often do when you're looking for assistants and back of house teams for these events. Definitely get on board with that, because you'll definitely learn a lot, I think, especially from you, Jevelle, like given that this is what you said, the 6th year that Privé's been up and running. Yeah. So
yeah. Which is awesome. I was involved in this not long after being with ASI. So after starting my intake, I was still a student at the time when I became involved, just because we saw the need for an event that would put our designers first, rather than being like an afterthought, I guess, when it comes to fashion. And I feel like when it comes to supporting local, there's, your local Australian designers, but also being in Perth, we have our own local that sometimes find it really hard to break into the Eastern State market, and that kind of clientele over there. So first and foremost for us, it's about putting that Perth or WA local designer, at the same level as an Eastern States. Everyone has the ability to be showcased on a runway, and they should be, and they shouldn't be considered an afterthought as well, when it comes to that. And that was probably the pinnacle into creating this event.
Given that you work in such a creative field, not only with the runway but also your editorial, and I mean, we mentioned it before that COVID's sort of been dipping in and out for 18 months now. Where do you seek inspiration from to get creative?
Yeah, and it's really hard because not only, like, I've got to be honest, like, I've been really lucky. We've had maybe a few lockdowns in Perth, but nowhere near the extent of what Melbourne has had, as the Eastern States have had, Sydney's having currently. So I've been really lucky in that I can still go about a lot of my work in the same way. But at the times when we have had lockdowns, it definitely is a shift mentally, because you're hitting that momentum, and when everything stops, it is hard to then get going again and build that momentum. And I think for me, probably the biggest pinnacle has been trying to find that creativity in the last 8 months when I've been solo parenting. I'm surviving on maybe 4 or 5 hours sleep a night. I'm still trying to show up for clients, show up for ASI, show up just even on Instagram and my own following, as well, as I've worked really hard to maintain that and build that. And so finding creativity when you are least feeling creative is really hard. And I say this to my students all a lot, it's really important that when you're not feeling creative, if you need to, it's almost like you need to sit down with yourself and have a conversation. Are you not feeling creative because you actually need to rest, and therefore rest? You can't force some things, and you need to listen and be intuitive with yourself a little bit. But also sometimes if it's not a rest, and it's maybe because you're not immersing yourself in creative experiences, and that's a time to put yourself out there and maybe force it a little bit. And what I mean by that is, if it's not your body needing a rest and you needing to give yourself that self-care, if it's because you're not being able to be, whether it's your own situation or worldwide or national situations, you can't be immersed creatively, because let's be honest, to be creative, a lot of creative people, it's almost like an energy when it comes to creativity, and how we feed off that. So if you can't immerse yourself in a creative sense, I always suggest putting yourself into an uncomfortable situation. And by that, it may be picking up a magazine you don't normally pick up. So reading something that isn't your normal go-to can be really inspiring, because if you're constantly seeing the same of the same of the same, how can you then get something different? So if you're someone that always reads Vogue Australia, get sent to your house or pick up a Vogue from a different country or publication. It can really open yourself up not only to new creatives, but new ways that they shoot. I mean, not every Vogue is the same. While we consider them all glossy magazines, Australia Vogue has this sense of coastal ease to it, because it's based around our lifestyle and what our readers like to see. When it comes to British Vogue, because Edward Enninful is at the helm, it has his natural style to it. So it's a little bit more gritty. It has almost a street style element to it as well, which I love. And we're seeing more of that due to COVID and the way that they can shoot their publications. American Vogue is very different. Even just recently, Vogue released a publication in my brain wants to say Sweden, but it's not. It's so this is where I'm having like mind gap. But there's been a new Vogue edition, and it's encompassed like Copenhagen, Sweden, all that kind of feel. So if you've been following Copenhagen fashion, the fashion week that's been happening there, street style is very different there to like other fashion capitals. So I feel like immersing yourself in something different is where you can get that creative flowing. When we experience something new, and think about when we could travel, when you travel somewhere new, you can be really inspired by culture and the fashion over there. So it's the same thing. So try and immerse yourself in something different. Look at different Instagrams. Watch different movies to what you watch. So if you never watch a foreign film, watch foreign films. Or if you're always about pop culture, it's time to look somewhere different. That's where you'll find new creativity. Is when you're doing the constant same of the same of the same. That's hard to be inspired, because you're not seeing something new. You're not getting a different result. So you can't, it's that old saying, if you keep doing the same thing, you can't expect something different. It's the same when it comes to creativity, even music. It doesn't mean you have to like it. And I think this is where I have that real chat with students as well. You don't have to like it. It doesn't have to be your favorite. It doesn't have to be where you naturally go. And that's okay. That's not the point of the exercise. The point of the exercise is to immerse yourself somewhere different, so that your brain can start to see beauty elsewhere, or maybe even be challenged. Editorial doesn't always have to be beautiful. Some of the best editorials are really out there and challenging, and we're seeing more of a political message and societal message when it comes to fashion and editorial styling, because it does mimic what's happening in society. We've seen that through decades. Fashion gets changed depending what's happening around the world, and that's can be a really great way to break down barriers as well in our society. So, I know I've just gone on a massive tangent about it, but that's where I go. I go for somewhere different. And somewhere that feels a little bit uncomfortable. So it's often going on Mad Cloud and choosing publications I would never choose normally.
I love that idea. And I think that comes back to even what we talk about in the Certificate of Fashion Styling course, where we chat about the reticular activating system and how we're so used to seeing much of the same, that conditioning. And it's not till we actually experience something different that we realize that there's different out there, because we're so tunnel vision most of the time. So that's a really good recommendation. You mentioned earlier that you studied exercise science at university. What career did you sort of land in, and what was the tipping point? You mentioned that there was time for a change, but was there like a pinnacle moment that you were like, it's time to do this officially? What did that transition look like?
I have a laugh about it now, but I feel like what did I used to call it? I hit 25 and it was like a quarterly life crisis. While I was in some great job roles. Like I was working for some really big sporting bodies here in WA, looking after their athletes. And that's where I think that's where I always imagined I would be. And then I got there and I realized it's not all that's cracked up to be, using a really naff saying. And there's a reason why it's a male dominated industry, in that the hours I was doing were just insane. I was getting up at 3 or 4 in the morning, depending who I was working with that day, doing training with athletes in the morning, because a lot of my athletes were what we were calling youth. So still school age. So working with them before school. There would then be some athletes I'd then work in the hours after 9. So generally I'd work somewhere between 4 or 5 a.m. till about 11, have a bit of a break, and then it would kick off again anywhere between 2 and 3 in the afternoon till maybe like 9 o'clock at night. Wow. So that's long hours for one. And they're hours that are hard to maintain, because you imagine by the time you get home and you've done just simple life things and switched off for the evening, you're not getting much sleep. And I know this is really funny to say when I've just mentioned I'm not getting much sleep now, but it's a different choice. Yeah. And it's just a moment. At the moment, it's just a phase. I hate that word, but it is just a phase. But before I realized if I ever wanted children, I was married at this point. My husband's career was really, skyrocketing, and his childhood dream was becoming true. And he knows this now, but that was also really hard to see, in that mine felt like it was like going down, and I was struggling with it. I was struggling with my identity. My identity is always, a part of my identity has always been my work and having happiness and passion in my job. And I just wasn't getting that, which was affecting the way that I was seeing myself. And then I was seeing my partner do this, and I was feeling like this. And then I realized as well, if we would ever have children, which we weren't ready for at the time, but I thought if I'm going to continue to grow in this role, which I knew I'm passionate and driven about that, and I want to constantly try and succeed and, do the best I can. And if I was ever to do that with children, it could never happen. And that's why it's male dominated, because naturally, even just having maternity leave, it really wasn't an option, because your contracts are based on seasons. Yeah. When you step away from a role, it's really hard to get back in there. So you work so hard. So it was going to become to the point where either I have to give up my career fully, or not have children, or not give the children or our future children the life that I imagined for them. And to me, I was like, there has to be a balance. There has to be somewhere where I can work and still feel passionate and love what I do, as well as support my husband in what he was doing, because that's a role that needs a lot of support. But also have children. I wanted to have everything that I had imagined. I wanted it. And I don't think, that's a selfish thing to say, that you want it all. And so it came to the point where I sat down with someone who was a mentor to me at the time, and she's like, you're going to have to make a call on this. And where do you see yourself going? Is it a different career that you can go into? As scary as that is there something you can do on the side to fulfill that passion? That was where we started exploring first. And, or where can I make a change here? And to ask someone like my husband, who was on this arc to represent in his country, like, to me, it was never that he was to compromise. Like, that is something that so few people get to do and experience. Where I could then, it came down to not asking for him to change. I had to change something for me. And where could I do it? And that's where, chatting down with a mentor and then a friend, it was a friend that actually suggested, well, you always are someone that has loved fashion. You're always a go-to. Can you explore that side? So I started a blog as just like a side thing to kind of explore that. And then realized I loved it more and more, and can I make a career in this industry? And that led me to, as like a lot of our stylists, I love fashion, but I'm not a designer. Yeah. I love art, but gosh, to design it, like, I'm really not a sewer. My nan tried very hard to teach me. I am not that wasn't a role I could go down. And so what else? And then, yeah, Googling just fashion careers. I came across styling. I looked it up. And yeah, as I mentioned previously, ASI popped up on, you know what it's like, the bots, you know, they hear you or they see you're searching. And next minute, an ad popped up on Facebook, and it was like, there you are, you know, career, you know, your answers that you need are right here in this Facebook advertisement, as weird as that is. And that's led me to here. And I'm, as scary as it was to make a jump from a career that I based 6 years of studying, a lot of money, like I still have a HEX debt that I'm paying off, a lot of hustle, a lot of long hours. I don't regret it at all, because this job, as much as I liked the other one, this job just gives me so much more in terms of, I love it. I'm passionate about it. I'm willing to do the hard work because it doesn't, like, everything else is so much better. I've had children, I can, you know, work and still support them. I can support my husband. So it's really has ticked all the boxes that I needed in a career.
Yeah, I love that. Who would you say has been your biggest supporter through this journey?
I'm definitely lucky in that I have a husband who is very supportive. And I think I'm really lucky in that his role is really unconventional. Like, you know, how many people do you know that get to play sport for a living? And so I remember saying to him, I'm going to go to this. It was almost like the ASI open day. I'm going to go to this and explore it and see what it is. And I remember after the first day, because then it was like a weekend, after the first day, he was away, Jason was away at the time, and I rang him in tears. I actually had to pull over, and I'm like, this is where I need to be. Like, I had an epiphany when Lauren was talking, and I was like, this is where I need to be. This is where I need to go. When Lauren was talking, I saw, it was almost like a flashback of some of the conversations I'd had with my mum over the years about, you know, that even though her shape has changed, it's still beautiful, and she can't see it, but we can see it. That I could see when she wore something that she loved, the confidence in that as well. I could also see the restriction around rules, such as everyone's heard mine and dressed up as lamb, and that as a woman over a certain age, you can't wear certain things or certain colors. I could see myself, conversations I'd had over the years growing up with fashion, and even just like as a child, I remember my dad saying to me, life is not a runway, Jevelle, just hurry up and get ready. Because I used to take time and fold my socks perfectly and, you know, really think about my outfits. And I think about that now. I'm like, no, life is a runway. Like, you know, your fashion can open up conversation. I mean, this is a pretty outrageous outfit, but it can open you up to, you know, new experiences and new conversations. And that's what I love about it. So I sat in that room when Lauren was talking, I had this epiphany that's where I needed to be, which is really funny because Penny says at the time now, I had massive resting bitch face, and they thought I was a complete lost cause and wondered who the heck this blonde girl was that was sitting in the front row with this, you know, face that was giving nothing away. Whereas in my mind, I was giving everything away. And it's really funny. But yeah, I had that conversation with Jason. I was like, this is where I need to be, and I'm going to have to make it work. And he was like, yep, if that's where you need to be, if this is what you see, then how can we make this work? And so I'm just so fortunate to have that support. Yeah. And I mean, I'm not a crier, but there's been a lot of emotional moments I've had with ASI. So there's that first day when I won, it was 2016, Stylist of the Year. I cried massively, and I'm definitely not a crier. So it's just what I've been able to achieve with ASI in this industry is just given me so much more than I ever could have. And even just like me, you're a completely different person. Like, I remember him that first year saying to me, you just changed. Like, you come back. Oh, look, me saying I'm not a crier, I'm starting to get, he says, like, you've come back to who you are. Like, we've been together a very long time and well before then. And he's like, I felt like we almost lost you at some point. Just, that sounds like very dramatic, but like your personality wise, that spark that you used to have just wasn't quite there anymore. And yeah, it's funny, like when you find yourself and your people. I remember saying this when I won the award, like I really found my people with ASI in the community. And I think that's why I'm really passionate about mentoring as well. It's amazing what you can do. Like it doesn't feel like work. And that's probably why I've never taken a maternity leave. Like I've always come back as soon as I could because I love my clients. I love what I do. I love this beautiful place that is ASI. And that's where it's been really hard not coming to Melbourne. That's my happy place. People know that. I say that openly. ASI Melbourne is my happy place, and that's where I see my future growing. But what I've gotten from the people in this industry, from our community, is just amazing. Like so much more than I can ever give back. And I'm just like, I've got a support system that's enabled me to get there. Because if I had someone say, no, you've just spent all this money and time in this other career, you're crazy, which some people did. And if I'd listened to that, there's no way I'd be feeling the way I'm feeling right now. Yeah, you've got to surround yourself with good people.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's something that will really resonate with a lot of people in the community, is that sense that somewhere along the way they weren't following what was really in their heart. And whether you stay in this industry or it's something that just fuels that sort of creative passion, love of fashion side of you, it doesn't matter what that looks like in terms of, you know, a full-fledged career or just that sort of like interest piece. You've still got to feed your soul. And I know that might sound a little bit woo-woo, but I think that's so important, especially with where we're at now. And yeah, it's so hard to even admit that to yourself sometimes as well, that like you're not happy, especially when you've invested so much money in a different sort of career path and thought your life was going to take a different trajectory. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm really glad that you shared that. I'm sure that that'll resonate with a lot of people. Yeah.
Oh, thanks. You know me, I can talk underwater, open book.
I think as mentors at ASI, we're all a bit like that. Love a chat.
I am notorious for going over, like in my mentoring sessions. I really am.
It's interesting though as well, like, and you probably get this with some of your calls. It's like you have maybe a second or even third, fourth conversation with a student, and it's like your old friends sometimes. Like you pick up where you left off, and it's like it's sometimes not necessarily even a mentoring conversation. It's just a catch up. Which is really cool.
Yeah. And sometimes that's what's needed. Let's be honest, especially in the way it has been, like connection is everything. As we know with humans, we have all those fears and we want to be loved and we want to share love and we need connection with people. So I think that's been the hardest thing for everyone in these COVID times, is it affects the way that we connect with people. And so for those people, I think even introverts are feeling, that they're missing that element of that physical connection with people and being able to see someone beyond a computer screen.
Yeah.
And so sometimes with students, it's just, you need to talk with someone that gets what you're going through or just even understands what you're doing. It's not so much, it may not be problem solving. It's just, you need that sounding board of someone that gets you, because it's hard to have that sounding board. As much as our friends and family love us, if they don't actually know what you're going through, even just the way they give you feedback doesn't can it make it better or worse. So like for an example, my husband and I do this thing where, especially because a lot of our connection at the moment has been over a phone, it's like, do you just need me to listen to you or do you need a solution? Yeah. Do you need an ear or a solution? And sometimes our students need solutions and sometimes they just need an ear, and that's okay. And knowing that when you're getting that ear, you're getting the right ear to hear you and understand where you're coming from. And it's not a me too. It's not sometimes I can fix everything for you. It's just, I get it. And yeah, it's really hard if it's that kind of situation. And just know that we're here for you, whatever you need. And as much as our friends and family love us, sometimes they're not the right ear to have that sounding board.
Yeah, definitely. And I think if you're someone who's come from working in a team environment and then you go into like a solo business, if you're used to ducking into that person's office and bouncing an idea off someone, it can feel really lonely to be on your own. And that's where those roadblocks can come up, because it's like, but I don't know if this is the right decision. And that's exactly what mentoring's like. It's like that person in the office next door that you can say, hey, do you have 5 minutes to bounce something off, and just brainstorm. And I mean, even Penny and I do that all the time when we're in the office, is that like I'll often go in and like, I just need to run this by you before I like, press send on an email, or decide that this is the right course of action. And it's so nice that we're able to provide that sort of support for our students. And you're so right, sometimes it's a solution. In fact, I have that conversation with my boyfriend sometimes where like I might be having a about something and I'm like, I don't need you to solve the problem, just listen. No. And it can be really frustrating.
It can be frustrating when they try and give you a solution. I'm like, you can't fix it, you're physically not here. I just need to like tell you it's been a really hard day or whatever it's been. But in the flip side of that, it's sometimes you just need to share like your win. Like I remember the first time I got published in a magazine, like people were like, cool. I'm like, it is a really big deal. Like this is cementing to me that I'm in the right spot. Or, my first paid client, they're like, oh yeah, like people hear the money, but it's not that. It's the fact that you are like, that is like your first stepping stone to even you seeing yourself as being legitimate. You're not a student, you have a legitimate business now. Someone's now paying you. It's a legitimate business now. And crap, now do I need to get an ABN and all that kind of stuff? But sometimes it's just, you've got to have the right person for that, to celebrate with you. Because we understand how big it is. Like for others, it may seem quite small. Even for yourself at the time, it can feel small, but you got to celebrate those wins. And sometimes it's knowing that we've been there and we get those wins as well, and get how like momentous they can be in your success.
Yeah, absolutely. Given that we're on the topic of wins, what does success look like for you at Style by Jevelle, and how do you actually measure success for yourself?
Yeah, it's probably, I do write goals down. It's funny, like I like affirmations and what they can resonate. And when you look back, you realize, you've actually brought that to the forefront just by like thinking about it. But to me, success is that maintaining that fire and that passion and being happy where I am. And I think that probably makes a lot more sense when I've explained the fact that it took a while, but I realized that I lost me for a little bit. And my identity is my work. And I'm so even open with Harrison, who's only 3, mummy works. He knows that. He doesn't understand what I do. Like, and that's okay, because it's quite complicated for a 3-year-old to understand. But, mummy works and she loves what she does. And that's why we have to spend some time apart for daycare. You can say I'm getting passionate because this is when my earbuds fall out. This is my issue. I talk really like big and my earbuds fall out. This is what happens when I get passionate. So to me, it's maintaining that passion and that happiness. And if I'm happy where I am, I feel like that really filters into family life and my social life. So to me, that's my success. As much as I have these goals for different milestones I want to hit, and more tangible goals, I think as well, that you can really, you can see that you're hitting success. Like, you can tick it or scrub it off like a to-do list. It's also how I feel. And that's what makes it easier. I should say easier, not easy, but makes it easier when it comes to, like, I'm going to admit, like the last 8 months have been really rough at times. And I know a lot of our students are going through the same thing. It's not children necessarily or lifestyle decisions, but at the moment it's really rough for a lot of people. But if I am doing what makes me happy, that can make some of the other stuff more manageable. And that's always at the core aspect of, I think, for me, success, and maintaining that love and that passion. And I think when Jason said it to me years ago, that spark, that's, as long as that is still burning, like I am still in the right place and where I need to be.
I love that. And I think that's a great place for us to wrap up as well, is just reconnect with that. I think we always say, is bring it back to your why and what it is about styling the fashion industry that actually, as you said, like keeps that fire burning. Yeah, it's so important.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much for today. It was so amazing to hear more about Privé and I guess that journey from I guess career change to now very successful stylist and ASI trainer and mentor. And I think so many of our students definitely look up to you in terms of someone who they want to aspire to be because of everything that you do, not only for them as a mentor and trainer, but also just in your success and the incredible imagery that you've produced, the clients you've worked with, and the support that you offer. So thank you, not only from me being part of the ASI team to another team member, but on behalf of our students, thank you for being so amazing.
Oh, thank you, Claire. That's so, I don't take that kind of like commentary well, but yeah, thank you so much.
Very welcome. Can't say enough how much I love this outfit, and I hope that after we record this, there's a selfie going up on Instagram.
With me and my you can't see now, but my Pilates socks are still on from this morning. So there you go, a little bit of like lifestyle, a little bit of fashion.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the way that we're sort of dressing now, isn't it?
It is all the appeal up top, as I mentioned.
I love it. All right, thank you so much, and I look forward to hopefully seeing you back in Melbourne very soon.
I hope so too. Thanks, Claire.